headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. "52 Venezuelans from the indigenous Yucpas community are returning home from Colombia thanks to the Return to the Homeland program. The Venezuelan authorities have provided 2 buses for the group to start their journey back home. Around 1,700 citizens have returned to Venezuela from Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil since the program was launched. And 90 other Venezuelan migrants have returned to their country from Peru, our correspondent reports.
This place saw them live. Now they are returning to their country. This is a new start. One marked by the experience.
There was a lot of racism and labor exploitation. The bosses hired us, and they didn't pay us when the week ended. They would do this every week. At the end of the month, they fired us. They took advantage of our situation while in Peru.
They are disappointed of a reality they did not know when they left Venezuela.
In these countries, they are taking advantage of Venezuelans who are migrating. They pay cheaper labor force, but we do the same work just like any other citizens of any country.
Now, a new path is waiting for them, a new vision of hope.
There
is a lot of discrimination. This will be a learning experience to young people. Stay in your country, to work for your country. You can do it.
The Return to the Homeland program has brought back over 700 Venezuelans from Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil. They have also received comprehensive care. Now they are at home.
And Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has celebrated the success of the Return to the Homeland plan. On Twitter, Arreaza said the program will continue to bring migrants from across Latin America. Arreaza also denounced the coup attempt promoted by the U.S. against President Nicolás Maduro. The New York Times has reported U.S. high officials allegedly met with members of the Venezuelan army to oust Maduro. The report says the conversations between the coup plotters began in August 2017. Arreaza said the reports is evidence of the U.S. attempts to intervene in Venezuela. And thousands have marched in Nicaragua to support President Daniel Ortega. Demonstrators demanded justice for those who passed during several protests the country has faced since mid-April. They accused the opposition of promoting terrorism. Ortega's supporters claim that he will remain in power. Ortega had previously made a call to the U.S. to respect Nicaragua. This after the UN Security Council discussed the crisis in the Central American country. Ortega said, quote, "The best thing they can do and should do is to not mess with Nicaragua."
We say to the North American governors, we say to the North American congressmen, we say to them that if they want to contribute to the peace in Nicaragua, they must respect Nicaragua as a sovereign nation.
The Workers' Party has accused the commander of the army of trying to intervene in the coming presidential election. In a public statement, the Workers' Party has warned that the army should not intervene in politics. The PT says this, quote, "something that is the armed forces haven't done since the dark times of the dictatorship." And over 50 trans people have registered as candidates for these elections. There are 17 trans candidates running for national congressional seats, 33 for state Congress, 2 for district Congress, and 1 for the Senate. This is 10 times more than the general elections in 2014. The proposals of trans candidates go further than gender issues. They reach different topics from education to social justice. And trade unions in Costa Rica have called for an indefinite strike to start on Monday. They are angry about the fiscal plan announced by the government. Trade unions say the economic reforms will only affect workers. Demonstrators also believe the measures will fix the economy.
The working class has suffered enough. The government plan is nothing for workers. We are not responsible, for the economic situation, and we are not paying for it. We have proposals, but the government does not want to listen to us.
We are organized and ready to start on Monday with this indefinite national strike. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday we will hold a regional strike, and on Wednesday it will be national. We will also march in San Jose towards the National Assembly.
And the Colombian armed forces have killed 2 FARC dissidents, leaders of a drug trafficking network. Victor David Segura and his sister Carmen were accused of drug trafficking, murder, extortion, forced displacement, and kidnappings. Both were killed in the border with Ecuador in a jungle area hit by drug violence.
The most dangerous leader of the Colombian Pacific, known as David, was killed. He considered himself the leader of what they called the United Guerrillas of the Pacific.
And 1 month has passed since Colombia's President Iván Duque took office. His supporters are enthusiastic, but others are worried.
During this first month, President Iván Duque has presented different measures in his agenda. Most of them have been presented by his cabinet of ministries, but critics say these are the proposals boosted by the country's economic powers.
It makes sense to tax certain products to then give the money to the families. And how do we do that? With the resources we get from these taxes.
According to economist Mario Valencia, the policies proposed by the Minister of Finance are just an extension of the neoliberal policies. These measures aim at strengthening the financial sector.
The taxes are applied to every product, regardless who's purchasing it. This is an indirect tax, so everyone pays the same, regardless their purchasing power.
Another heavily criticized proposal comes from the Minister of Defense. It aims at regulating social protest.
The state should guarantee that protests do not provoke violence. That is it. But if the police obstructs public demonstrations, that means they are violating our constitution and our laws.
The increase of basic wage is one of the most urgent topics. Just 15 days ago, Senator Álvaro Uribe proposed a hike to the minimum wage, but some analysts say this is just a strategy.
Uribe is using this as a tool and wrong and illegal. There's already a commission formed by employers and employees that is in charge of negotiating the minimum wage.
But if this proposal is approved, who would benefit from it?
What the bill is proposing is for the possible increase to benefit the financial sector and not the workers. This amount of increase would go to a public account and not to the workers.
The government is also promoting the so-called Diamond Plan, aimed at fighting drug trafficking, but many say the plan does not attack the root of the problem.
The state should guarantee the end of paramilitary groups. It should also guarantee the political participation and social integration of former FARC members. Another important topic touches on the protection of social leaders that continue to be killed and shows that the state has no political will in solving this.
The government is also working on reforms to the use of glyphosate, to ban marijuana, and the creation of a Ministry of Families. Another criticized move was the nomination of Alejandro Ordóñez as Colombia's representative in the Organization of American States.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
We are African. Culture and tradition is what we are born with.
We might be apart in terms of distance, but we are always together.
We need to love ourselves. Back to Africa.
Today, only on Telesur.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A march in Chile has paid tribute to the victims of the dictatorship as the 45th anniversary of the coup against President Salvador Allende approaches. Demonstrators demanded memory, truth, and justice as they walked to a cemetery to remember the victims of the dictatorship. The Mapuche people also joined the march. Some protesters clashed with the police. On September 11th, authorities will commemorate the anniversary that marked the start of the regime of dictator Augusto Pinochet that lasted for 17 years.
We, the Mapuche people, also march as we also suffer repression. We want truth and justice. We are also here because during these 28 years of pseudo-democracy we have been ignored. We were repressed during the dictatorship and we are now with the anti-terrorist law that criminalizes our struggle.
The judges who make a corporate defense for the people convicted of crimes against humanity do not obey the treaties or international agreements against these abominable and horrific crimes that they have committed against our families.
A bank of genetic data will help to find those who disappeared in Peru during its internal conflict. The government has signed a law to create a sample database with the DNA of the relatives of the missing. These samples will be cross-checked with genetic information of unidentified human remains. Peru's Ministry of Justice estimates that over 20,000 people were disappeared in 2 decades of conflict. More and more Argentinians go to soup kitchens in capital Buenos Aires hit by the economic crisis. Some places distribute around 2,000 meals each week. The government announced new austerity measures last week to face the recession, sparking protests. Hundreds of people have lost their jobs as the peso devaluated by 50% this year and inflation reached 40%.
The number of people that come has increased, especially several families. Around 100 or more families have come to the soup kitchen in the last month.
Every day we cook 600 or 700 food meals, only for this side of the soup kitchen. That's only lunch. Dinner is 500 or 700 more meals.
And hundreds of dismissed public workers from the former labor and agronomy ministries have taken to the streets of Argentina. They are rejecting the massive layoffs. Hundreds of workers have already been dismissed and fear the number could increase. 12 ministries have been absorbed by other government offices as part of the austerity measures imposed by the government of Mauricio Macri.
Yesterday, I received the dismissal telegram. There are 500 of us who are now without work, and taking into account the country situation, the economic situation, we will not find work. 500 of us are out of work. In April, it was 300 people. Every week, they are dismissing more people.
There is a lot of uncertainty about the number of layoffs the situation can lead to, and with this in mind, public workers are mobilizing in all ministries throughout Argentina.
And meanwhile, for unions leading strikes in Buenos Aires have reached an agreement with the government on wage increase. On Friday, university teachers and students attended their lectures, blocking dozens of main avenues as part of protests against government austerity measures. Protesters blame the government for burdening the country with a $50 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. Argentina is suffering its worst crisis since Mauricio Macri was elected president. And Barbados has signed a $290 million economic assistance agreement with the International Monetary Fund. The IMF's executive board is expected to consider the proposed arrangement by October. Once approved, Barbados would have immediate access to $49 million. The Caribbean country has the fourth highest debt to GDP ratio in the world after Japan, Greece, and Sudan.
U.S. Executive Director
And the Dominican Republic has described their diplomatic relations with the U.S. as excellent. The statement comes just 2 days after the U.S. recalled his ambassador in Santo Domingo for consultations. But Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas Maldonado says that calling a diplomat for consultations is normal and must be respected. He added that the two countries continue to work in their bilateral agenda. Former Chilean Bishop Juan Barros is the suspect of two separate investigations into the cover-up of sexual abuses. Barros was interrogated for more than 3 hours. He is accused of protecting his former mentor, Fernando Caradima, who was found guilty of sexually abusing teenage boys for years. Pope Francis accepted Barros' resignation in June after defending him earlier this year.
I told the prosecutor that I knew or didn't know, and I hold hope in God that all will turn out well and that the truth will start coming to light.
In terms of the dates, the number of facts, the victims, these are matters being investigated. We have carried out an undetermined number of reports. We also have plenty of testimonies from the victims, so within that context, we are advancing in our investigation.
And still in Chile, the government has announced a decontamination plan in Valparaiso. This after toxic gases coming from mines and refineries caused an environmental crisis. Classes were suspended in the communities of Quintero and Puchuncaví, the most affected by the crisis. The government has blamed the oil state company for the poisoning and said it will take legal action. At least 200 people from the coastal region have been affected, mostly miners.
The first thing is to find the cause of what produced the problem. We still don't know what caused this. We still do not have definitive, reliable, and fully validated results of what really produced the poisoning.
My girl said on Saturday, "It hurts a little here, Mom." When I saw her, and she had 4 more blisters. On Monday, when I saw her, she said, "Look, Mom, now I have them on my back." She had everything red.
And the people of Rio de Janeiro have also been coming together to begin the reconstruction of Brazil's National Museum. The museum burned down on Sunday, destroying 200 years of priceless artifacts.
The building that housed Brazil's National Museum survived the fire that destroyed 90% of the artifacts inside. Nearly 20 million pieces spanning millions of years of existence were lost. The academic community has promised to continue reconstruction efforts.
Porque no solamente es historia de Brasil lo que se ha perdido.
We didn't just lose Brazilian history. We lost artifacts representing millions of years of human history, like fossils, indigenous artifacts, and ancient insects.
De fósiles, de lenguas indígenas.
One of the biggest losses was the oldest human fossil in the American continent, Egyptian mummies, along with countless archaeological and geological collections that told the history of the continent's original people.
This was an attack on our memory, on our history, on the original languages of Latin America. It's very serious, one of the worst attacks on the history of the indigenous people.
The National Museum is part of the University of Rio de Janeiro, which has faced large budget cuts since 2015. They've only become worse since President Michel Temer came to office. He cut the museum's budget by nearly $20 million.
It's not just the museum. The whole country is being affected by this perverse logic of budget cutbacks. We have started to mobilize, trying to show our reality, to inform people to fight these policies. To destroy Rio's university is to destroy the nation itself. It's destroying our future.
One of Michel Temer's first measures was a constitutional amendment that froze public investments for 20 years, greatly affecting culture and education.
I
think there has to be political compromise so we as a nation can revoke these measures, because education, health, culture and even science are being eradicated.
The Brazilian people will not hold anything back in their efforts to see the museum be rebuilt. They also say they will take to the streets to demand that the constitutional amendment that froze public spending for 20 years be repealed.
Desde Rio de Janeiro, André Vieira e Sebastián Soto, Telesur, Brasil.
And 30 giant murals now dress a hill in Bolivia's capital, La Paz. More than 100 artists have painted almost 2,500 square meters of mural. The colors that were used are aimed at reflecting on Latin American roots. The project was part of the 3rd edition of the Meeting of Latin American Muralism. And Argentinian football legend Diego Armando Maradona has arrived to Mexico to coach his new team, the Dorados of Sinaloa. Euphoric fans received Maradona at his arrival to the Mexican city of Culiacan. The 2nd Division football club wants Maradona to stay for what remains of the 2018 season and next season as well. The Argentinian star says he loves Mexican football. An opera has brought rhythm to a popular market in Mexico City. A group of musicians surprised marketgoers with a musical performance. The concert ended with standing ovations. The initiative aims to bring art to everyday life in the bustling capital. More shows are expected across the popular markets. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Over 400 Syrian families have fled the northwestern city of Idlib as combat between the government and rebels continue. Social media videos show residents fleeing with their belongings towards the border areas. Damascus has stepped up its assault on the rebels' last major stronghold. The last summit between both parties, promoted by Russia, Iran, and Turkey, failed to reach a ceasefire. And hundreds of Kosovar Albanians have blocked access to a village to protest the visit of Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić. Demonstrators burned tires and used vehicles as tree trunks to create barricades on the main road in the north of Kosovo. The Serbian president is making a two-day visit to the country. Kosovo declared its independence from Serbia in 2008, 1 decade after a bloody war between the two territories. Serbia refuses to recognize Kosovo. And leaders of the Ethiopian opposition party, Patriotic Jimboat 7, have arrived in the country after 11 years of exile. Thousands of supporters welcomed them on the streets. The government also welcomed them and said Ethiopia will benefit from a peaceful contest of ideas. Many opposition parties are returning to the country after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed implemented political reforms. Angolan President João Lourenço has been voted in as leader of the ruling MPLA party. This after former President José Eduardo dos Santos stepped down after nearly 4 decades. The handover comes as new policies challenge Dos Santos' legacy. Dos Santos had originally proposed stepping down from the party leadership by April 2019, but Lourenço insisted it had to be on Saturday. The ruling party in Mauritania has taken the lead in the legislative, regional, and local elections held earlier this month. The party has won 67 out of the 150 National Assembly seats. It also took 4 regional councils and 108 municipalities of 219. The National Electoral Commission has announced 12 electoral districts will go to the second round for the legislative election. North Korea has held a military parade and mass rally in Pyongyang to mark the 70th anniversary of its founding. Thousands of North Korean troops, followed by artillery and tanks, paraded through the main square in the city. Leader Kim Jong-un showed off his friendship with China, raising the hand of President Xi Jinping's envoy as they saluted the crowd together. Armored personnel, carriers, rocket launchers, and tanks follow, with biplanes flying overhead in a 70 formation. And tons of plastic in the Pacific Ocean could be removed with the help of the ocean cleanup system. Promoters expect to clean up to 50% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch located between Hawaii and California in 5 years. Over 5 trillion pieces of plastic currently litter the ocean. And countries at the Conference on Climate Change in Bangkok have not agreed on the financing of the fight against global warming. Activists protested in Thailand's capital as the UN talks stumbled. Different marches were also held across the world to call for climate protection. In Paris, Bogota, and San Francisco, protesters demanded governments to take legal action against climate change. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.